There is a golden rule or a saying which goes by do unto others as you want others to do unto you. Why is it so difficult? It's a simple saying. Behave with others as you want others to behave with you. Subconsciously, we end up doing what others have done to us. We do to others what others have done to us. Either copy it or rebel it. There is an exercise in cutting the ties that bind by Phyllis Crystal or Phyllis Crystal method, where you take a piece of paper, write mother on one side and father on the other side. Divide the paper into half. On one side, write all the qualities you like or liked in your mother, and all the qualities that you disliked in your mother. Repeat the same for your father. The purpose of this exercise is not to criticize your parents, but to know about your own self. And one can do this exercise at any time, even when you have not done the cut, no intentions of doing the cut, after you have done the cut, years later. And then circle those qualities that you have in you or you lack. The qualities can be related to food, money, relationships, behavior pattern, anger and compassion and organization, risk-taking, fear, phobias, and so forth, courage. Whether before or after this, you comment on it. Did I copy it or did I rebel it? Copy means I do this thing the way my mother did it. Rebel means I did exactly opposite of how my parents did it. An example would be money. Let's say my mother was very careful with money. I'm very careful with money. That's copying it. My mother was very stingy with money. I'm also very stingy with money. That's copying it. Rebelling would be obviously if I'm careless with money or I spend money too freely. I don't know how to save. Then we have a foundation of things to work on. The point here is it's perfectly okay, it's desirable, it's awesome to be able to copy some values, culture, good qualities from your parents. But when it comes to something that we better not copy, not rebel, It's an opportunity for us to let go, leave, cut ties with those qualities, and so forth. This is relatively easy in terms of recognizing it. We're not even talking about how to release those qualities or letting go or cutting ties from. There's a whole methodology. Just barely coming to an awareness, and awareness is half the job. So this exercise is very powerful. Often what happens is trauma. Trauma related, or what has been repeatedly done or repeatedly said, leaves a deep mark in the psyche, in the subconscious. Sometimes things that were wrong or bad. Now, this exercise doesn't have to be limited to parents. It can be extended to everything related to the environment in which we grew up. Could be school, teachers, friends, society, siblings, religion, neighborhood. Phyllis would often ask us to pay attention to the sentences that we have heard over and over again. Some examples. Oh, you're good for nothing. You're not smart. You're not clever enough. You're not as good as your brother or sister. You're not strong enough, etc. Some of these may have some factual bearing to it, even though it's all wrong. It's wrong to compare people because each person has his or her own strengths, and you can't absolutely compare a younger one with older one in relation to some aspect of personality. Sometimes these phrases or sentences that are said are actually manipulative. Our loved ones can manipulate us, our mind, our behaviors for a favorable outcome to them by repeatedly saying certain phrases or sentences about us, making us believe something about us which is untrue, something negative, so that we can follow them, so that we are dependent on them, so that it makes them look good in front of us and in their mind and eyes. And it gives them an opportunity to have so-called an upper hand. So what happens is that after decades, we may discover that some of these things are popping up. Some of these things have not been resolved. And these things pop up only when we are triggered. Generally, we behave uh, the way we are. We are in control of ourselves, and we go out of control of ourselves when we are triggered. And when we are triggered, then it defaults to some sort of a pattern. And we behave the only way we know, or what we have repeatedly heard, or what was repeatedly done to us. I've even seen a very interesting behavior that goes multi-generational. You may have done something good in terms of dharmic, sacrificing for the sake of your family, and the family took advantage of your sacrifices, and in the end, you ended up losing. You thought you were the breadwinner, and you thought you were the giver. You thought you're doing a good deed, but the tables turn. The receiver, the benefactor, who was supposedly so-called poor, flips around, is no longer poor. I'm saying relatively speaking. And the person who's a giver is now relatively poor. And you have seen that this concept of cutting yourself to feed in the name of dharma, good karma, being a good person, being a good citizen, over half a lifetime cycle has not been good overall to either the giver or the receiver. Even after seeing the whole thing, you may end up repeating this or imposing this cycle of give and take. On other people, your close associates, or your loved ones. In other words, you end up hurting other people directly or indirectly the same way it has hurt you. Or you end up doing unto others what was done unto you, because the hurt or the trauma that you endured or you suffered was so deep in your psyche, in your subconscious mind, that you act out without knowing, thinking that it is not good for you or for the other person. And that's not being myself, because that's not who purely I am. That is a mental construct that is trauma-induced, pain-induced, suffering-induced. So, do we have a solution here? Perhaps the solution is to follow your heart. Listen to and follow your heart. In this case, heart is the seat of your true self. And how do you connect to your heart? One of the easiest way to connect to your heart is through meditation, where we let go or bypass our mind, our body, our senses, and go deep, straight into the heart. Heart-to-heart meditation is the quickest and easiest way. Even asking yourself, what should I do in this situation? Putting a pause, calming down, or ask your high C or higher consciousness, or ask your God, what should I do? When faced with a certain situation, a difficult situation, whether it is financial, health, relationship, work, and so forth, any kind of problem where we tend to react through our past trauma experiences, and whether we become aware of it or somebody else has made us aware of a certain pattern in us, we first recognize the pattern that, oh, I'm doing this. Ideally, you can go through self-awareness, few hours worth, few days worth, few weeks worth, few months worth, whatever it is, and realize it, or just, I don't know why I do what I do, but I know I do. Become aware of it, accept it, and then surrender it to your God, to your high C. Let go. Let thy will be done, not my will or the will of the people who induced trauma in me. And that is truly, I love me, I love you, whoever the person is in front of you today, and I even love you, the person who induced trauma in me, and I love God, and God loves me.